Good morning, everyone. Hello, this is 194, Introduction to Poetry. My name is Daniel Feldman, Dr. Daniel Feldman, and I'm glad to be with you in what is for some of you your first class at Bar Ilan. Not how anyone imagined it a year ago, but it was evident already about half a year ago that this was going to be the case. Welcome to your college degree. Welcome to Bar Ilan. Welcome to the English literature program and to our specific course 194 introduction to poetry. If everyone, most people are complying with the university's request to have their cameras on. If at all possible, please do so. I have here with me in the room two of my kids, and that is just how it's going to be this for the next while. Also, if you have not put your name the into the participants list, you can do that right now. Just go to the participants list, hover over your name, and there should be another drag down menu, and you can ask to rename yourself. So no one should be named Zoom user. Put in your name, ideally in English, please. So Bator, Noah for this class. That is for two reasons. Not everyone, that is the language in which we conduct our business. And second of all, this is your attendance. I'm not going to be taking strict attendance as I would if we were on campus, but the class is being recorded. All classes the university has asked to have recorded. We can discuss if anybody has an issue with that. This is not going out to YouTube. However, if people do have an issue and they feel somewhat inhibited by being recorded, and there are things that they would say if they were not being recorded, you can share that with me privately, and I'm very sympathetic that we can make an accommodation. But you do want to have your but because it's being recorded, all of the participants in the roster are tabulated, and we can and that's how I will actually keep track of who's here. The computer will do it for me. So I'm very glad to see you all here. It's nice to see everyone's faces. People are in all different parts of this country. Some people are abroad. I know we have some people pretty far abroad who had to either get reserved time in the evenings, and you guys will get to know each other on Wednesday in this class. We will have we'll have a breakout exercise in which you'll have a chance to speak to each other, and you'll learn a little bit more about where you are, how you got to this program, and what especially is remarkable this semester is you've made it to a university program in a very challenging environment, and that is not self-evident. It is always an achievement starting a university program. Some of you are doing hashlamot, meaning you are in your MA program. Most of you are studying for your new BA. It is not something that we take. It's not something that we take for granted, and you are all to be saluted. It was a long way getting here, made even more difficult by this year. So you can give yourselves a round of applause. You can give yourselves a pat on the back. This class is a focus. This class is focuses on poetry. In the introductory video, sort of the online syllabus that I recorded and posted, and I hope all of you had a chance. Many of you already had a chance to view. I can see from the views. If you've not, you should do so immediately after class today. You can take a look at that again. That is about the formal framework of our class, requirements, what we do in general, and the organization of the class. Every class will have what's called a syllabus. The syllabus for this class is a PowerPoint presentation. It's both shared online, and and I narrated it in that video. You can go back to it at any point in the semester, especially late in the semester where you're wondering, like, exactly how is my grade computed? It's all there in that document, and you shouldn't need to refer to it often, but of course it's there, and it is in some ways kind of sort of the agreement between us, between the instructor and you. What I want to say that goes beyond it. I'm not fond of repeating either what's on screens or what's on a PowerPoint. Is this that the reason that we're studying poetry, and actually next Monday, a week from today at this time, we're going to have a whole conversation just about this. Why is this one of the first courses that the faculty, are requiring you to take? And one of my colleagues, Professor Shulak, Marcella Shulak, will be with us, an accomplished poet herself, to discuss this. So we'll have a co-taught class next Monday. But it's not necessarily poetry. It's not any aspect of English literature. It's, in my mind, the intense small sample size that poetry offers. And we're going to talk a lot over the next 2 weeks of what poetry does to us emotionally, intellectually, to us as readers, that can stimulate our nerves as readers, as lovers of literature, as students of literature. It is the perfect genre for us to delve into, to get into the long course of literary study that you are now embarking on. And so, beyond any specific piece of information, beyond any set of poems, I can completely rewrite our entire reading list and it would have the same effect. It's really giving you an opportunity to engage the art, to engage words, and have fun with it. A lot of the theme of today, where there's a lot of stress, no one knows, is the Zoom going to work? What will I expect of everyone else? Who are these people? Who are these little boxes on a screen? I'm going to try to diffuse some of that tension today. We have a few terrific poems that we're going to get right into. And to remember that while this is an intellectual, I did say that in the video, while this is an intellectual exercise, while this is a course, there are grades, you are now setting on the journey, an important one for you, for your families, for your communities, toward a degree in a few years. And I never lose sight, and I hope, and I'm sure you won't either, that day to day, as tedious as it will get some days, that we are working towards your degree, but there is an intellectual training that is bound up with a kind of identity that you have as readers, as people who appreciate written words, as people who appreciate English, that will always motivate us. And we're going to focus on that a little bit today. You can always write to me in the chat. I'm not constantly monitoring it, but I do have it open. If I can answer it, I will do so. If it's something urgent, you can always raise your hand. You have 2 ways of doing that. You can raise your hand either as I'm going to show you myself. You can raise your hand here on the side. Let me show you. If you, again, oh, I can't do it as a host. It's strange. But I think you can hover over your participant name in the list, and you can raise your hand. If anybody wants to do that, you can demonstrate it. Let's see. I can't do that myself, unfortunately. You can also, there it is. Thank you, Eden, for demonstrating. You can also unmute yourself. I think you all have the ability to unmute. You heard it from a few people just a few minutes ago. You can unmute yourselves. This is not, we're all adults here. I keep them muted simply, there are things you gain, there are things you lose from in Zoom. One is that it's very passive, which is not good, and it can seem very boring. But there's the convenience. Half of you are in your bedrooms or salons or wherever it is around your house or apartments. You can unmute yourself if you have something to say at any given moment. And then, of course, there's the chat, which I'm monitoring. And there are Zoom has very limited on-screen reactions. I don't even know why they have these 2, but those are the 2. If you have something, you can, these very basic emoticons, you can use those as well. Okay, as I said to you last week, and everyone should maintain their energy. These Zoom days are going to be very long. You probably know that for people who have been doing this for the past year. So classes are going to be classes hopefully will be relatively short and focused, and they will also, as I said, include a kind of mix of pre-recorded live discussion like this and some activities which we're not going to do today ourselves. Maybe I don't think we will. I'll try, but certainly on Wednesday we'll get to it. Okay, let me switch now. I have two cameras. I'm very into the whole all the bells and whistles. So this way I can see you in two different places, and I also have my screen free. I don't have two screens, but I'm just using my phone as a second camera, and hopefully you can hear me well. If anybody does have questions, definitely write down now. So I'm glad to see everyone here again today. We have full participation. This is terrific, and we're going to meet each other over the next few lessons. Let's go straight to the poetry. As I said, and what you need to do is keep either on two devices or in two parts of your screen, whatever helps you, to have the Moodle page open, which I'm going to go to in a second, and keep that's why I'm going to the second screen, and that's where I'm going to project a lot of the material. Everything is there. It took me a little longer because I had trouble with the sequencing from last year and this year. Someone wrote me. It took, I don't even know why it eventually filled out the whole page the way I wanted it, but finally the page is looking the way I want, and we're all set. Let's go now to screen share, and let's take a look at what we have here. Okay, and if there are issues, and with it, don't get worked up about the technical aspects. There are going to be technical glitches. Each of us has our own aptitude, our own expertise with and our own budgets also with the tech. People have different equipment. The only things that you must have, as I said last week in the orientation, is some space, some time, and a basic way of getting online. A computer is great. Not everyone has a computer, and some people are doing this on their phones. We'll talk about that as weeks go by. But don't get frazzled by this isn't working for me. I can't find it. Where are we? We are now in our Moodle class, which is kind of like it's expanded version of the syllabus. This is what stores all of the content. As most of you have, excuse me, 1 second. Most of you have already accessed this. You can see I have our course WhatsApp group. You guys can all post to that. I'm not going to put all the readings in it. It's not going to be today's lesson is this, but if anybody has a question like what am I supposed to do, what's the homework, you can write. If I see it, I'll respond. Anyone can respond. You do not have to be in that group, but obviously it's a benefit. It's another service for all of you. The Zoom class is here, and I'm already speaking to someone on after class. But everyone is welcome to get in touch with me. Email. I know that the hours and days leading up to the start of class are always frenetic, so I wasn't answering as much as I usually do, but I did get back to as many of you as I could. I'm available on email. You can use the chat function that Moodle offers. That's a way to chat with me. And obviously, if you're in the WhatsApp group, you can even WhatsApp me. I'm pretty accessible, although your colleagues will be just as helpful if it's just a clarification question, like what am I supposed to do? You can ask colleagues, other people in the class, as well as you can ask me. I have as some of you noted, there is a course Facebook page that I've used in years past. I'm not sure the function of it would be this semester. Usually that's an adjunct. We're meeting on campus, and it's something that adds another social dimension. It's there. I can certainly admit everyone to it. I don't think I'm going to post everything there doubly as I have here already on this page. People want it, let me know. You have all these different ways of telling me, and I can certainly open it, but I've not admitted people to it this year, or at least not yet for this semester. Here's where the syllabus, here's the announcements. The announcements go by, I don't know exactly how the Bar-Ilan server works. Something I've not figured out in many years. When I write a course announcement, until it can be sometimes half an hour, it could be 20 minutes, it could be 2 hours, it could be 4 hours. I have no idea. That's why sometimes you'll get emails in the middle of the night. I've written them towards the end of my evening, and then they come out hours later. I think it might have to do with the server, how much traffic there is on their servers, but I actually have no idea. So that is what is in announcements. That's where I will share the emails, and when I want to email you, I'll try my best to maintain in touch. People seem to like a lot of communication with the instructors rather than too little. That's fine, as long as you're not being bombarded, and it's not uncomfortable for you. That's all the announcements. And in the syllabus, that's where the link is. The link is to the presentation that I've already shared with you, and many of you have looked at. Let's go now to what we're doing. So that's enough for the business. 15 minutes, enough time. The course for today. I began with, oh, that's not the introduction to the course. That's the wrong link up there. Anyway, the introduction to our course is something that you already watched, and you've already seen the orientation. You either attended the orientation or you were there. This is just the short version, not the full meeting. The full meeting is also available, and I'll post that as a link somewhere for you guys. And 194 teachers, 190 teachers, excuse me, 106 teachers, academic writing teachers will have it as well. As you know from our meeting last week, 106 academic writing is your main course for first year BA students. Poetry and historical backgrounds fill in the picture. They're important courses, but the main emphasis remains on writing. I ended the introductory video, which is not this one here, but it's linked somewhere, I hope. I know I sent it to you. It ends with this poem, and it's this poem that I want to continue with right now. And it is a poem that is it's named same as our introduction to our course. It is by Billy Collins, this very witty, very comic, very clever American poet, somewhat elderly, not ancient now, still active. And I will ask him to, or someone to read it. I actually know who's reading it here in this video. Okay, let's listen. Here's our first poem for the class.
Introduction to Poetry. I ask them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means.
Good. That is Billy Collins, the poet, reading from his own poem, Introduction to Poetry. Here it is, this short poem. The poem is, of course, it is meant to be an ironic poem. It's a funny poem. Sometimes, by the way, the poems, I'll read them. Sometimes I'll ask some of you to read them. It's also a way to hear your voices occasionally. And when we can, we'll hear the authors read them. I ask them, of course, the I being a speaker. It's not actually Billy Collins. It's a persona. A persona is the version of the speaker that he wishes to project. And we can listen to it again, by the way. See, I realized that as once I started it, I realized that I had to put the, excuse me, that's not to Sarah, that's to everyone. I realized that the sound was not great, but let's talk for a second. Let me talk for a second, and then we'll get back to it, just to set up the scenario of the poem. The scenario being, what is the situation in the poem? I, this speaker, posing as kind of like me, as a poetry teacher, someone who is asking them, who's them? Them being, you're probably answering this to yourselves, the students in a poetry class. That is the scenario. That is the situation. The speaker, the persona that Billy Collins projects here, I ask my students to take a poem, any old poem, could be this poem, and hold it up to the light. someone speaking? Someone wants to speak to me? Just speak up. I asked them to hold it up to the light, like a color slide. And let me just go back to that collage, because some of these things are just realia, things that are from the real world. I'm just going to restart the sharing, but with the computer voice here, so you can hear it better. And you'll see what a color slide is, because some of these things are not evident to us in our 21st century lives. It's 1 minute, so we can hear it again.
Introduction to Poetry. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light like a color slide, or press an ear against its hive. I say, drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out, or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means.
So it's supposed to be kind of funny. It ends with this horrific final. It ends with this horrific. I'm back to seeing all of you, so I can go back to this camera. It ends with that horrible. Oh, sorry. Let's go on to the next video. And we'll hear how funny he is, by the way, in just one more video that I posted from him. But the notion that a poem is something you can walk inside, is something physical, and you can keep it open on your screen. I have it open on mine, but I want to see you guys for a second. That it's something that tactile, something physical, something tangible, that you can walk inside, that you can touch, that you can put up to the light. Something that has its own sound. It is full of sensory stimulation, right? It's something you can, as I was trying to suggest in that video I made, like where I pictured my baby son at the end, something you can play with. It is something to be savored, to be tasted, to be played with. It is a space to enter into. It is like skimming across, as it had in that picture, something you can skim across, not necessarily dive into always with such profound meaning, the surface, and wave to the author. And that particular metaphor, waving to the author on the shore, connotes, it suggests that the author is not any more important than the reader, which is a very large issue, one we'll return to right at the end of the semester. But that this poem, once it is created, belongs as much, it's for the reader's enjoyment, more perhaps even than the author's approval. And the teacher, perhaps we realize it's also kind of the poet as well, wants all of this from, in this case, his students. And then there is that transition. Let me go back to sharing for a second. So I see you guys are with it. Quick glance at you suggest that, shows me that. All but is the most important, something called a transition, where we change speeds. English is a very, not quite as much as Hebrew or as Arabic, but it is a very concise language. It has sometimes these short, powerful words. And the most important transition, telling you changing speeds, is always that 3-letter word of Old English, but. But I want all this, but all they want to do, the students, all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair. Again, a persona. We'll talk about these specific technical terms if they're unfamiliar to you, but I'm already throwing them out there since they're not all that difficult to grasp. They want to tie the poem to a chair as if the poem is a living thing, a person. This is personification of the poem. We'll have a lot of dry examples of that to drill it in, to make it clear to you. To subject the poem to torture and torture a confession out of it. What is the confession that the poem can admit, can offer up? Kind of a meaning, perhaps a single reading, the answer, that question that perhaps you are often asking. I certainly did when I was your age. What does this poem mean? the speaker's point, the so-called teacher, the persona teacher's objective here is to convince students that that is not always, or maybe not even most of the time, the point, what the poem necessarily means. In fact, what the meaning is of this poem is that the meaning is secondary to the experience, to the pleasure, the fun, the joy of reading a text. To tie the poem to the chair, to sort of derive and twist a confession out of it, to twist it until all that's left is its meaning, is to beat it with a hose to find out what it really means. The poem is just something there. Now, what I want to go, I'm going to go back now to the our video collage. Before we get to the next poem, we're going to sit back, relax, and listen to Collins because he's a funny individual. And in this next video, it's actually an ad. I'm not so fond of marketing materials, but some of you will become marketing experts after you graduate. This is an ad for a course in which Collins was paid to take part. It's called the Master Class Series, very well produced. It also begs the question, what are you doing here with me when you could be taking a class with Billy Collins? What I can offer you is the personal contact. He's not going to personally be in touch with you. Here's the ad for Billy Collins' master class. It's worth watching, and he actually has some insightful points to raise. But most of it's just funny. And load, please.
You should probably read all your poems out loud. Dogs are very good to read poetry to. Cats, not so much. Fish are good. If you have a goldfish, your first audience before you send your poetry out into the world. Poetry does not need a story. That's not what its function is. Poetry makes a lot of people tense. You speak English. This poem is in English, and yet you have no idea what it means. A lot of poetry begins as a secret and covert activity. So poetry is sort of a diary without the lock, a diary that you want people to read. Poem often has two subjects, the starting subject and then the discovered subject. I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. The poem wants to leave the object and go beyond it into something greater. This is what poets are paid for. I mean, to look at clouds, watch chipmunks, someone has to keep an eye on these things. I like to make a real mess. I like to doodle, cross things out. I try to write a good line and then another good line, another good line, but no one's a good line machine, so there's a lot of staring involved. Poetry provides us with a history of the human heart. If you trace it back to the oldest poems we can find, the emotions are the same. Underneath it all, we're all after the same thing. When you read something back that it just has your mark on it, no one else could have written that but you. This voice is just yours, and yours alone. I'm Billy Collins, and this is my masterclass.
Okay, I enjoyed that. I've watched that a lot of all their ads. That was one of their more successful ones. The notion that poetry is a diary without a lock. That too is a line of poetry in its own right. It is a beautiful image. It is a metaphor, but it also is immediately clear what he means when he says that. It is a voice speaking to other people, seeking address, looking for someone contact. That voice is what we are trying to cultivate ourselves. We do it first by reading, and then eventually by writing. That is the way, and writing, as Dr. Shupak, Dr. Berkman will convince you of, is an imitative practice. We become better at writing by imitating others, by reading what other people wrote. Each of you has your own voice. We're going to try to draw it out over the next few years. We're going to try to sharpen who you are. We're not here to change you in terms of your views, but to change you by intervening in your life. What we're doing here, and we're going to look at this in a poem in a second, another poem by Billy Collins, is to take that useless, worthless thing that has absolutely no market value, although I guess some people are paying this company, not my company, but are paying Masterclass a lot of money to produce these. Give me the same budget and I'll try to produce something of the same value. The useless, worthless thing can actually be the most important object in the world. What the record of the human heart, what humans feel. And if there's ever been a year as like this, as our current one, to remind us that what is in the human heart is a confused, painful, powerful, sometimes joyous thing. What could be more important than that? That is the path that you've all decided to embark on, to use the most powerful language in the world, English, still the preeminent language in the world, to compass, to search, to map out the human heart, the range of human emotions, from grief and anger to pride, joy, happiness, love, loss, the full range of human experience. It is a study in humanity. That's what we are, the Madei Ruch, the humanities. It is a study in how language does this and how language connects the human and the social. We're going to talk a lot about that question, Zara. I'm glad to have you along. You always ask good questions. Exactly that question is the topic of another poem that we're going to get to, probably looks like on Wednesday, but normal, or what I will call natural language versus poetic language. Let's just look at the and that question that Eden asks is a big question, and we're going to return to that, about to whom does the poem belong. We can return to it now and then, but I have it highlighted at the end of the course. Billy Collins mentioned one other poem of his in that short video, that advertisement, called The Lanyard, and that is the other poem that I have of his. It is also, you can go back, it's on Moodle, and I will open it up again for you. We're not going to have a reading of it, but I want to get to that. I want to get to Adam's Curse, and that would be a great effort for today. Back to Moodle here. The Lanyard. The Lanyard is a poem that is classic Billy Collins. It is casual. It seems and Billy Collins is very useful for framing the question that Zara already asked, of what is just regular speech, what is a poetic line versus an ordinary line, such as the sentences that I am attempting to articulate right now. Billy Collins' voice is one of, as if it's not poetry at all. As he said, just one line, another line. The other day, I was ricocheting slowly off the blue walls of this room, moving as if underwater from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, when I found myself in the L section of the dictionary, where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one into the past more suddenly, a past where I sat at a workbench, at a camp, by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid long, thin plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. The scenario, there are two levels of it, so we have to read both those, what are called stanzas, to get a grasp of it. It is the sort of indolent, poetic speaker, the person with a lot of time on his hands, the kind of individual that Collins projects both in that video, but also in the beginning of this poem, which I think is from 2005. The individual who's just got time in his hands, someone who reads for fun the dictionary, both someone with a lot of time, but also someone who moves from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to envelope. This is the environment of the poet. Art, music, typewriter, trying to write, and when stuck, goes to the book of words, to the dictionary, opens it up at L, and finds this word lanyard. Not a word that most of you probably know, even native English speakers. Lanyard can mean several different things. In this context, he's referring to this object. Let me actually search. I didn't think to do this before. He's thinking of these things that kids made. I did it certainly in my age, in my youth, where lanyards were these bits of plastic like this. This is what he means, that children would, you can weave them together, these little tiny plastic strips, very thin, that you can weave together in different patterns or knots. There is the box one here. I can give you a tutorial on this after class. There is the spiral, and then there's the heralded cobra when you become more advanced. The lanyard that he is doing is in Adirondack. Adirondacks are a mountain range in far upstate New York, near the Canadian border between New York and Vermont. And he's sitting there in summer camp, Machane Kites, at this beautiful Adirondack lake. He's far away from his parents, and he is taking up the practice of weaving together, creating a lanyard, braiding a lanyard is the word, as a gift for my mother. Ordinary, this is not a poem so far, at least not a poem that anyone would care about. Now the next step in the poem, why are we actually looking at this? I had never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one. If that's what you did with them, no one does anything with these lanyards. You spend hours and hours making them, and they're uncomfortable to wear. They chafe against your skin, and they have no real purpose. Keep that in mind, by the way. They have no real purpose. If that's what you did, I never saw anyone wearing them, but that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She, now transition to what the mother is, why he's motivated to give his mother a gift. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted spoons of medicine to my lips, laid cold cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy night, and taught me to walk and swim, and I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, and here is clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied, which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones, and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here, I said, is the lanyard I made at camp. And here I wish to say to her now is a smaller gift, not the worn truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the 2-tone lanyard from my hand, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. Let me ask people, you can answer in chat. Let me see how this works. Again, the first day is very stressful. People are tense, so it's not a great day for having an open conversation, but people can put answers in chat, and I've shifted now to my other camera so I can see all of you. When does this text, that's the fancy word that we use in English college classrooms, when does this text become a poem? Where does it shift to becoming a poem? What makes it a poem? You can answer either in chat silently, or you can unmute yourself. I will mute myself for a moment. Yeah, I don't see any hands up. From the beginning, says Ellen, from the 4th verse, maybe by the pattern of syllables. So, okay, great. When he starts describing his actions, his mother's done, his structure as a poem verses. Excellent, great, awesome. That's enough. I'm gonna. So if anybody wants to say anything else in non-interested comments here in the chat, I'll give you guys one more chance if anybody wants to unmute themselves and speak.
Yes. Maybe I think the main thing that makes this a poem is the ability of conveying a lot of meaning in few words.
That was Zara, I assume, right? Thank you, Zara. The excellent point. So a few different answers that I see in between the chat and also what Mohammed just said, and a few things that there are a lot of comments came very quickly, which is great. This is something that Zoom does allow, is actually a whole lot of input very quickly. It can be very passive, like you guys are just listening, and it's boring, and you were so motivated an hour ago, and now it seems like I've been sitting here for 3 hours. That is one part of Zoom. The other one is 10 people can contribute in the space of 1 minute in the way that we never could in person, which kind of balances out for the impersonal, remote nature of this. So a few things. One is that several of you said, like Ora said, and Noah, that the formal elements, and we're going to talk a lot about this, there are things in this text that differentiate it from a prose or ordinary language in the way it's written, use of syllables, use of sounds, use of line breaks, formal as in not dressed up in a tuxedo, but the form of it, the way it is written, its form. It has the form of a poem. It looks like one, it sounds like one, it resembles one, even the metaphors. You can look for that there. One, someone else says, from the beginning, it seems like a poem from the very outset, from the start. Someone else said from the fourth stanza, where the mother enters the scene. The mother is in the 1, 2, 3, 4. She gave me life and milk from her breast. Not the kind of thing I ordinarily say. Whereas, I had this memory 1 year when I was a kid. I was looking. I suddenly had this memory by reading a book. It reminded me of when I was a child back at camp. She gave me milk and breast. Like, that is the description of the mother is highly poetic indeed. And then I love what Zara, you said, that there is a capacity in this text to condense a great deal of meaning, or maybe let's be more human about it, emotion. A fancy way that academic people like to talk about emotion, it's just a word because they feel uncomfortable with their feelings, is to talk about affect. Affect is just a fancy word for feelings, but it gets a lot of feeling. It makes you feel something about this speaker. It makes you feel alive. It makes you identify with the person, even though just about none of us can identify with that experience. Almost none of us, just about, I would assume none of us has that experience of being on an Adirondack lake in childhood, creating a lanyard, even though one of you said, I have a lanyard on my keychain. I salute you. Good job. The condensation, the density, let me put this, density of feeling, affect, meaning. This density of meaning, the ability to convey a lot, and what it is doesn't matter. The ability to convey a lot in a very short space is a characteristic property of poetry. It's one of the things that distinguishes it. What is he trying to convey? Now let's get to the actual meaning, do the opposite of what he said in that first poem. Now, and this is the reason that he mentioned it, that they shot to it. They did a cutaway of it in that video, and it's why I'm asking you to read it here. There is that lanyard, and the lanyard, we think throughout the poem until that final stanza. Let me go back to sharing screens, and we're coming towards the end today, so we're gonna take a little break just to refresh ourselves. I'll give you like a 2-minute mini break in a second, and then we're just gonna start Adam's Curse to get just to hear it, and then that'll be it for us for today. And I'll tell you what you have to do for Wednesday. Let me share screen again so we can just look at the poem one more time. That lanyard, which seems to be just a lanyard, memory, a trifle of childhood, an L word. It's even random. The memory, it's just a random citing, a random entry in the dictionary, the book of words. Transforms over the course of the poem into something else. And that's the last thing I want us to think about. If you know what I'm talking about, great. If you don't, follow along for the next 3-4 minutes. And if you still don't know what I'm talking about after the next 5 minutes, ask a question. The lanyard is just this occasion for memory. It's the arbitrarily, randomly chosen word from the dictionary. And it's this absurd thing, this strip of plastic that has no inherent meaning throughout the poem. And then he develops from, the text develops from this fourth stanza where I am now. She gave me milk and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in a sick room and laid cold cloths. She took me care and taught me to walk and swim. And I, in turn, presented her with a lanyard. The lanyard becomes something else here. The lanyard becomes the recompense, the meager means of thanking the parent, the lifelong debt that children have to their parents, and that feeling of being indebted, being in the debt to our parents. I see a bunch of you have your kids. My kids are still here, and there's a pathos, there is that emotion, there's that both sadness and beauty and the absurdity of trying to make up for the food, the nursing from when as a child, to the care, to the thousands of meals, to the lessons teaching me to walk and swim. Here is clothing, a good education, and here is your lanyard. That repetition of, and here is your lanyard, and here is your lanyard, makes the lanyard representative of that debt. But then in the final stanza, the lanyard becomes something else still. So I assume that, I don't insist on it, but I hope that metaphorical, that figural, that representative element of what the lanyard represents is already apparent to you, or to some of you. If not, that's the muscle that we're going to try to develop. Only you can develop it for yourself. How to read, how to become an expert reader, especially in English. By the way, one of the most powerful skills that you can have in the contemporary marketplace. I always argue to people, more powerful than knowing how to, how to fill out an Excel sheet, which is a very lucrative skill, but being able to read metaphorically, being able to understand text and patterns and symbols is probably long-term a more lucrative trait. I will return to that. I will preach that to you often during our semester together. And then it becomes something even more symbolic, another level of abstract representation in that final stanza. Once he acknowledges, and here is, I wish to say to you, a gift, right? The lanyard has become the gift. It has become an attempt to repay the debt. So much for that. And here I wish to say to her now is a smaller gift, not the one truth that you can never repay your mother, something that he's already made clear. But what makes this truly a remarkable poem is this next symbolic level of what the lanyard becomes, and this is it. The rueful admission that when she took the two-tone lanyard from my hand, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even. The lanyard becomes this useless, worthless thing that not only fails to repay the debt, but is the expression of his inability ever to do so. It is the rueful admission. It is words. It is a thought. It is an idea. A useless, worthless thing that matters everything in the world. Just 20 minutes ago, Collins used those terms to describe something else. What is it? What has the lanyard finally become? The lanyard has finally become, as it says in the title to the poem, the lanyard has become the poem. The poem is that admission. The poem is that ability to say, I know this is crazy. I know this is absurd. I know this is even in some ways insulting and childish. It is something that it is all I have. It is my ability. It is all I can say about how much I am in debt to my parents. It is the acknowledgement of his conceit as a child, the absurdity of the child's thought. It is his memory of it. The lanyard has become words. It has become thought. It has become feeling. The lanyard has become, as it says again, has become the poem. It is that worthless, useless thing that is his ability. It is his attempt to try to revisit his childish thought about, and now I thought we were even. It is his guilt over it. It is his ruefulness, his regret over it. It is this useless, worthless thing that he wove together out of different words, out of different thoughts, out of different memories, out of line by line, creating this box-like shape. Look at the poem, right? How it sits on the page. That has meaning, not only for him, not only in his memory of his mother, but for all of us in our memories of our mothers, our experiences as mothers or as fathers, our experience as readers of poetry. Lanyard is first this silly little thing. It's just a word. It starts as just a word, a random word. It then becomes, I'm going to end this. It becomes this, it starts as just a random word arbitrarily chosen from the dictionary. It becomes this funny, trivial thing, frivolous thing that he creates, a child's pastime. It then becomes this more meaningful attempt to repay the debt of gratitude to a parent, and then finally becomes all of the mix of emotions, this full tapestry, this texture, this weaving together of language, of memory, of feeling, of humor also. This useless, worthless thing that has infinite value, that is a poem. All right. That's mostly how far I want to go. Let's see what else people have to say here. Anybody have a comment on this? You can unmute yourselves. You're welcome to do so. We're almost done for today. Yeah, the rueful, I like your idea, Sarah. The beauty, the innocent, the rueful admission that children believe that what they create in the world, the worth of a lanyard is tantamount to what their parents have done for them. And he still knows a lot. Yeah, he's able to, at least as an adult, he's able to revisit that. Okay. I want to simply I want to tell you what we're going to do next and turn to the next poem. We're not going to have anywhere close to time to do it now. In this course, at least, I am going to strive valiantly to keep our meetings brisk, businesslike, focused, and always under an hour if possible. That is my goal. And with your cooperation, hopefully we will achieve it more often than not. The first class, and I really mean first week, I didn't have any expectation this we'll get through all of this, continues with Adam's Curse. Adam's Curse is also medium length poem, not terribly long. I'd like you to, let me go to share screen. We're just going to listen to it this morning, and then we will discuss it on Wednesday. Back to share screen, and then I'm available. There's one person who already asked me to speak with them, but if anybody else does, you can stick around, and then I'll just tell you. I can invite you back. We'll find a way to speak if you want to. And again, I'm not. And don't tell me the technology is daunting. It's daunting for everyone. I kind of enjoy putting together these videos, but then the standards keep going up, so it creates its own kind of stress in that respect. And also, it's very hard to know who you are and to know what you're like or what you're thinking through this impersonal medium. For Wednesday, we're going to discuss for a great length Adam's Curse. We're also going to have there are three things. There's Adam's Curse right here. That's what I'm going to click on and we're going to listen to. There is also a video discussion, an 11-minute video that you should watch. This will actually save us time. Watch it before class. It's just another format. It's pre-recorded. I was going to watch it today, but you can watch it before class on Wednesday. It's an 11-minute pre-recorded conversation, my wife and me. It's just to give, instead of me always talking to you, which is really boring, it gives you another voice to hear. We're going to discuss it together, this poem. We're going to either do it via chat, comments. There's one other poem that we want to cover on Wednesday. It's called Digging. There's also a breakout activity. And then this can be done either for Wednesday or for next week. We're going to wrap up the week with, there's a presentation that I am going to do on Wednesday. You can look at it anytime you wish, but you don't have to. On Wednesday, I'll go through this PowerPoint that's right here. I'm going to just read with you 2 brief paragraphs from a long essay, and your homework over the weekend is to read this longish essay about what is poetry, and there will be a homework assignment due on Monday next week before class. It'll be due for Monday next week. That has not yet, it's not yet gone live. You will get another email either Wednesday or Thursday detailing what it will entail. Danielle, you had a question, or someone had a question? No? Okay. All right. Adam's Curse. Let me see. There's no reading. Here is the text of the poem. It's somewhat long, if you're reading it yourselves. We're going to read it again on Wednesday. So I'm going to ask, when we start again on Wednesday, we'll ask for some readers. There's this kind of like very deep, I think it's actually somewhat melodramatic reading that I'm going to listen
Adam's
to now.
Curse by W.B. Yeats. We sat together and that beautiful mild woman, your close friend, and you and I, and talked of poetry. I said, a line will take as hours may be, and yet, if it does not seem a moment's thought, our stitching and unstitching has been naught. Better to go down upon your marrow bones and scrub a kitchen pavement, or break stones like an old pauper in all kinds of weather. For to articulate sweet sounds together is to work harder than all these, and yet be thought an idler by the noisy set of bankers, schoolmasters, and clergymen, the martyrs call the world. And thereupon that beautiful mild woman, for whose sake there's many a one shall find out all heartache on finding that her voice is sweet and low, replied, to be born woman is to know, although they do not talk of it at school, that we must labor to be beautiful. I said, it's certain there is no fine thing since Adam's fall, but needs much laboring. There have been lovers who thought love should be so much compounded of high courtesy, that they would sigh and quote with learned looks precedents out of beautiful old books, and now it seems an idle trade enough. We sat, grown quiet at the name of love. We saw the last embers of daylight die, and in the trembling blue-green of the sky a moon, worn as if it had been a shell, washed by time's waters as they rose and fell, about the stars and broke in days and years. I had a thought for no one's but your ears, that you were beautiful, and that I strove to love you in the old high way of love, that it had all seemed happy, and yet we'd grown as weary-hearted as that hollow moon.
Okay, guys, that's just about it for today. For Wednesday, think about what this poem says about beauty, about poetry. You'll watch the video and get a sense, the pre-recorded video discussion, get a sense of that. And I want to hear it in your voice. That was it's a very deep and sonorous voice. But I'm going to ask someone else. We'll read it in different sections, so I'll have at least 3 readers. You can think about if you want to volunteer at the start of class on Wednesday. And we'll talk about this poem. It's part of a series of poems that I used to launch this course, to start this course, that are all about poetry. Poems that in one way or another, either overtly, like Introduction to Poetry, clearly about poetry, or obliquely from the side, kind of surreptitiously, covertly, are all about poetry and will help us to understand what is poetry by using poems themselves. I'm stopping the recording. Thank you for your attention this first day. You guys will be talking a little bit more on Wednesday, and I look forward to hearing your voice then. Okay, you guys can go. Anybody wants to stick around can do so. Good luck with your first day. Great to meet you all.